Hey everybody, welcome. It's Resistance Live for the 13th of March, 2023. I have already figured out that I'm going to have to talk a whole bunch of you down off the ledge today, and that's okay. That's one of the reasons why we're here. I am going to tell you all right now that everybody freaking out about Judge McAfee in Georgia should not be doing so, and we'll talk about it all. But first things first, I am ECM. I'm coming to you from occupied Tongva territory here in Southern California. I am today wearing a navy blue blouse. I am sitting in my office in front of a green plant and a big standing lamp and my big cushy desk chair. And my pronouns are she, her. And I am, for our visually challenged viewers, a pink-skinned, green-eyed, dirty blonde-haired woman. I'm glad you're all here. Okay, so Patreon feed this morning is a mess. And I love you guys, and I'm really glad for all the questions. But as per usual, when we talk about media literacy here, which we do an awful lot, one of the things that I have to tell you all is that if you see something that causes this kind of like emotional reaction in your body, where you're panicking and you're terrified and you think something's gone wrong, or you're instantly angry, or you're instantly anxious, that's a moment to take a deep breath, pause, and learn the facts. All right. So we're going to talk about what happened with Judge McAfee's ruling this morning in Fulton County, because I know a lot of you are really upset. And I just want to mention to everyone that this is why the Patreon feed is here. If you are not yet a subscriber here at patreon.com/resistance live, you can head on over there and become a subscriber for as little as $2 a month and ask me questions that will help to maintain your mental health through incredibly trying political and legal times. All right, let's talk about it. So this morning, Judge McAfee dismissed 6 counts in Fulton County. There are 41 total charges in Fulton County, which means that there are 35 counts that remain. Okay. Those counts, for everybody who doesn't know this, are racketeering counts. He has not dismissed any of the RICO charges at all. What he has dismissed are 6 counts relating to solicitation of a Georgia official to violate their oath of office. Okay. The basis of the ruling is that the indictment is not specific enough about the terms of the oath of office and the Constitution that the 6 defendants allegedly solicited the Georgia officials to violate. Okay. And this is actually like a really solid ruling. Let me explain why. I mean, one of the things Judge McAfee points out in this ruling is that the Constitution is profoundly complex. All right. And one of the things that you do when you take an oath of office is you swear to uphold and defend the Constitution of the laws of the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America. All right. The Constitution is very, very big. I mean, for those of you who don't know, right? Like almost 24 amendments, clauses, each one of which takes up like literally thousands of pages of Supreme Court jurisprudence. And if in an indictment to solicit someone to violate the oath of office, you do not specify what part of the oath of office that you are alleging has been solicited to be violated, you have a specificity problem. All right. And one of the things that I want to point out here is that somebody said on the Patreon feed, like, who cares if this makes it hard for the defense to defend? Well, that's not actually the standard for something like this. Okay. An indictment has to effectively put on notice the defendants of what they are being accused of. And if it does not do that with enough specificity, it's void. Okay. That is exactly what the ruling today says, that the indictment should have more specifically alleged what the parts of the oath of office that were being solicited to be violated were. This is not a big deal. Like, and again, I have to kind of point this out to everyone. All right. 35 criminal counts still remain. And this was not a dismissal with prejudice. So what does that mean? It means that Fani Willis could go back and indict everyone on these 6 counts of solicitation with greater specificity should she care to. But I'm going to tell you something, she's not going to do that. I mean, she could, she might. But I'm going to tell you right now, my prediction is that she will not. Why? Because she does not need those counts to convict these defendants, including Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, John Eastman, and all of their friends who are, a part of these particular dismissals. She does not need these counts to convict them of things that will send them to prison for the rest of their lives. And frankly, my view on this is that you win some, you lose some. And this judge, who has been extremely thorough, notwithstanding the fact that he's only been on the bench now for 14 months, is clearly trying to find ways to make sure that the verdict is appeal proof. All right. Because the last thing that we want here is Trump being convicted on crimes, having it go up to the appellate court, the Circuit Court of Appeals, not the Circuit Court of Appeals, the Court of Appeals in Georgia, and have that court rule that the indictment was void for vagueness and he never should have been tried on those counts, and sending it all back down to the trial court. That's the last thing we want. The last thing we want, right? So if the difference here is a tighter, cleaner trial with an appeal-proof verdict that still has the possibility of sending the defendants to prison for life, why do we care about this? This actually strikes me as a really smart ruling. And it strikes me as strategically very smart for a judge who wants to manage his courtroom and manage this trial and make sure that nothing is being done that crosses an edge here that could potentially jeopardize the verdict. So I hope that helps. I hope this has like talked you off a little bit of a ledge, but nobody should be losing it over this. Now, we are still waiting for Judge McAfee to rule on the issue of Fani Willis and disqualification. That is allegedly coming between now and Friday, sometime in the next 48 hours. Okay. I'm just going to tell you all something about this. All right. I am not alone. In fact, like I am in extremely good company in the lawyers who are thinking that there is no proof and no evidence of any conflict of interest or misconduct here that would warrant the removal of Fani Willis and Nathan Wade from the case. My prediction, let's just call it 90-10, is that this is going to end up being a big nothing burger, and that also, at the bare minimum, the fact that he has narrowed the trial. Now, these two things are not related under law, all right? But the fact that he has narrowed the trial and that this ruling has come first is arguably an indication that he doesn't intend to remove Fani Willis. Because doing it in this consecutive order doesn't really make sense if what you are planning to do is remove the DA, remove the special prosecutor, and have the whole case reassigned through a special panel in Georgia. We talked about all of this like months ago when this first issue came up. You can go back and watch the broadcast on what happens next if Fani Willis happens to be removed from the case. I don't think it's going to happen. Now, that's like tea leaf reading, okay? And also a little bit of prediction. But I'm going to tell you right now, the defense did not make out an evidentiary case for her removal. And so we're going to see what happens between now and Friday. But I'm going to tell you all from the start, okay? This ruling today is not a bad ruling. If anything, it tightens the case and cleans it up. And it's going to make sure that the verdict is less appeal, that fundamentally it's appeal proof if it comes through. That's the point. All right. So nobody should be freaking out about that. All right. Next thing that I wanted to talk about today is Ken Buck. So Ken Buck has quit the GOP. And not just said that he's not running for election again, but he's like actually resigned. And one of the things that is very, very significant about this is it actually has an extreme bearing on the current makeup of the House. All right. We are now down to a very, very slim majority in the GOP House, to the point that if like 3 people are out on a given day, the Democrats are kind of in control. And we have another potential issue arising here, which is Lauren Boebert. This one I actually really like. I mean, there's been a lot of speculation that Ken Buck did this just to kind of screw Lauren Boebert. I don't actually mean like mess up her seat. I'm not convinced that that's actually the reason. I frankly think, based on some of the press interviews that Ken Buck has done lately, that he's just simply had enough. Like he's had enough. He's had enough with the nonsense in the House, as many GOP reps have who have quit. All right. But one of the things that I want people to kind of grasp here is that the end of Ken Buck signals very bad things for the GOP majority in the House between now and the end of the year. And just as is the case here in California, like many of you were asking me why, at least is Katie Porter going to lose her seat in the House? Well, there's a rule in Colorado that you can't run for 2 seats at once. You can't hold 2 seats at once. All right. Lauren Boebert, you will recall, has decided that she's running in the district over from her because her race was so tight in the district that she currently holds. That means that technically she has to resign her current seat in order to run for election in the other district. She is not allowed to run for a seat that would result in her holding the seat twice. Okay. And if she wins, she's going to be sat almost immediately, which means like kind of over. So she's going to have to resign. That's going to bring it down to two. Okay. And we have a very strange situation happening in the House GOP right now. Entirely predictable on the basis of like the fact that the GOP is now entirely Trumpism or nothing else. And if you defy your leader, you're gone. All right. But we have this really interesting indication right now, which is that the annual House GOP retreat is coming up. And unlike in prior years, more than 100 members of the House GOP are refusing to attend. And I have to point out here that Ken Buck is a member of the Freedom Caucus. Like, this dude is not a moderate. He's not a centrist Republican. Like, he's far right. And he's mad enough about what's happening with regard to the bill concerning Ukraine that he has this is the straw that has broken the camel's back. And meanwhile, almost half the GOP House caucus is refusing to attend the annual retreat. It's a mess. And, if you want a little bit more insight on this, you can go back and watch yesterday's broadcast about Lara Trump taking over the RNC and what that's going to predict, because there's even more nuance in that since yesterday. And I'm just going to tell you all right now, I think the House GOP and the GOP generally are over. I truly think the party is withering on the vine to the point that it may not actually exist as any force in American politics after November. Here's the most important part for the sake of the House, though. If just two more people beyond Boebert quit, resign, walk away between now and November, Hakeem Jeffries is the Speaker of the House. And Ken Buck himself pointed out in an interview that he gave this morning, he was asked whether or not Speaker Johnson had been upset about his resignation, because, the other thing I'm just going to say about this situation with Ken Buck is he gave no one any indication that this was coming. He dropped this bombshell, and even Mike Johnson didn't know that his caucus was going to be down yet another member come yesterday. What Ken Buck said is this: I think they're going to be a lot more worried about the next few people than they are about me. And that is an indication that Ken Buck thinks that there are more resignations coming. Okay. So we're in a situation here where, I'm not going to weep for this. We're watching the GOP destroy itself. We're watching them hang everybody out to dry who has the gall to defy Trump in even the smallest of ways. And there could be a change of power in the House. I'm not kidding about this, by the way, between now and November, that would completely alter the lay of the land in American politics between now and then. Can you imagine what we could get done if we had two more resignations in the House and Hakeem Jeffries was the Speaker, all the committees flip, we have a majority in the Senate, and Joe Biden is running for re-election? My God, it kind of doesn't get any better than that for us. So we've got to look at the reality of the lay of the land inside the GOP. And the lay of the land right now is that they are completely dysfunctional. They are barely holding on to power in the House. They are in a situation where it's really not going to take very much for it to be the total end of this era. And I'm just going to sit back and watch it all go, because, as the saying goes, all we have to do is kind of give them enough rope and they're going to do the work for us. Okay. So it is a wild, wild set of developments with Ken Buck's resignation and what's happening in Lauren Boebert's district. I mean, the other thing I'm just going to point out here is Steve Scalise is still in cancer treatment. There are other folks inside the House GOP who regularly miss votes. Hakeem Jeffries already indicated a couple of months ago that if there happened to be extended absences for any reason in the House GOP, the House Democrats would indeed put forward their own speaker vote. Wild times, my friends. Very, very wild times. And, let me just say this, okay? For the person on the question feed who's like, what about the MAGA party? They're not going to go away quietly. How do you think they're going to maintain power if they don't have control of the House, the Senate, and the presidency? They've already got stochastic terrorists running around in the street doing things to Democratic leaders, right? But they're not going to have power. They're not going to have power. And, yes, there's going to be fascists running around. By the way, I'm just going to point this out. There's always been fascists inside the United States. That's not any different. The question is the degree of authority that they have over the federal government and the state legislatures. And I'm going to tell you one other thing here right now, okay? In yesterday's primaries, there were people in large majorities, we're talking high teens, who came out and voted for Nikki Haley instead of Donald Trump, even though she has already quit the race. There are very serious problems for the Republicans in this election cycle, and they're not going away. They've got a huge chunk of their party that will not vote for Trump, no matter what. Huge chunk of their party that indicated at the time of Super Tuesday that if Nikki Haley dropped out, they were voting for Biden. We're talking like 20% of the electorate. So I just want everybody to understand, okay, that none of this means that we can get complacent, and none of it means that we can take our feet off the gas, and none of it means that you can stop mobilizing or stop canvassing or stop talking to your neighbors about the importance of voting in the 2024 election, up and down the ballot, including all your local races for things like school board. But it does mean that they're imploding. And it's going to mean very significant things if it really plays out the way the dominoes are falling for generations in American politics. And, frankly, I think it's time to see the back of them because I'm done. I'm going to point out something else. All of the economic hardship that working people are having right now traces all the way back to Ronald Reagan. It's not like this started with Donald Trump. So, we shall see how this all plays out. But Ken Buck's resignation is a turning point. No question about it. No question about it. All right. Let's talk about the TikTok ban because there's a lot of questions about this morning on the Patreon feed and what it means and why. All right. By the way, we've got 1,001 people watching here. Please don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this broadcast if it's meaningful to you, if it's educating you. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel. But if you want to support this broadcast, truly, head on over to patreon.com/resistancelive, become a paid subscriber for as little as $2 a month. Subscriptions go all the way up to $100 a month. There's lots of perks. You get to ask questions for 2 hours before every broadcast, and I will answer them on the air. And you can also join us for Progressive Coffee Hour every Sunday and all sorts of other goodies. So check it out. All right. So on the Patreon feed this morning, there were a lot of questions about this TikTok ban. This morning, the House passed a TikTok it's not actually a TikTok ban. So let's be really clear about it. What the law says that has now passed the House with bipartisan support is that ByteDance, TikTok's parent company, must divest the company, meaning like sell it, so that it is not under the control of the Chinese Communist Party, or TikTok will be banned inside the United States. Now, it hasn't passed the Senate yet. It faces an uphill battle in the Senate. But I want everybody to understand like the nuances of this law, because one of the things that folks need to grasp here is that the rationale for it is legitimate, in my opinion, okay? But this is actually not the way to handle it. So the rationale for the law, as it is being explained and in the co-sponsorship, is this, okay? It is that because TikTok is under the control of the Chinese government, and because it is a data scraping app, please don't mistake this, okay? There's been documented evidence of this, that TikTok can actually read literally any keystroke that is on the phone of a phone that has it installed. So you log in to your healthcare provider through like MyChart on your phone, TikTok can scrape your password information and your health data, okay? You log in to your bank on your phone, TikTok can scrape your banking data, all right? So there are privacy concerns about TikTok that are of one particular issue, which is like the ability to scrape data and then, and this is the really important part, target voters. So the big concern here is whether or not China, through TikTok and the manipulation of the algorithm, is going to be feeding disinformation into the US population during the election cycle. Now, there's also very serious First Amendment concerns here, and those are also legitimate. Whether or not the creative expression, the political views, the freedom of speech that we enjoy in the United States is going to be squelched through the operation of a TikTok ban if TikTok is not sold by ByteDance. Okay, that's also a really legitimate concern because TikTok has become a source of information and organizing, right? We don't want to deny that either. It's a complicated situation. My personal opinion on this is that what we actually need is social media regulation across the board. And if we had a bill that said disinformation is illegal and you, social media company, have an obligation to make sure that if political or medical or other disinformation that is designed to divide, that is not legitimate, that is being forced upon the American people is on your platform, you can be shut down, you can be sued, you can be fined. That would be much more the way to handle this effectively. Bye. Let me find this person. There goes a troll. I get this guy. Thank you. Let's get this dude. Bye. All right. One of the things that I want people to be aware of is that I personally have been really very much in favor of much more heavily regulated social media laws because we've seen so much interference, and we're seeing it now every day in the American electorate as a result of disinformation that is being allowed to run rampant on platforms like X, sometimes on Threads, sometimes on other social media platforms. Facebook is full of it. We know that they have amplified far-right disinformation sources literally for the last 10 years. So if we had additional regulation, we wouldn't actually have to ban any platform, and we wouldn't have a free speech issue. We wouldn't have an issue of like losing the ability to organize and mobilize. Okay. But we do have really serious concerns with TikTok. And, just in the same way, if Russia owned a social media platform that had taken off inside the United States, I would understand why people would be very worried about that. I am not sure that this bill is the right means to do what it is aimed to do. And I will tell you all that if it passes the Senate and it's signed into law by President Biden, there's going to be immediate legal challenges to it under the First Amendment. So for those folks who are making money off of TikTok, there are a lot of creators who have made money off the TikTok Creator Fund. I don't think TikTok's going anywhere anytime soon. And it's also not going to be banned if it's divested, even in the event that the law is upheld. But it's profoundly important that we understand that disinformation is running rampant right now, not just about the US elections, but about a lot of international events. And it's been documented. It's being tracked by institutions like MIT. The issue of AI and deep fakes and, the modification of photography. It's a serious issue right now on all social media platforms, and I continue to be really worried about it. So as you all know, we're running this program starting in the middle of April called Truth or Fiction that is designed in part to train you on media literacy and combating disinformation where you live. The unfortunate fact is because we do not have legitimate regulation of social media, it's on all of us to learn the skill sets that we need to do it. Somebody asked a question this morning over on the Patreon feed about, these random platforms that are like media fact check, right? I'm going to tell you all right now that the problem with all of those platforms, in the same way that the fact checkers on CNN are problematic, okay, is that anything that is run by a human or by AI that has been educated by a human has an inherent bias. And the only way that you can be sure, you, all of our wonderful audience members, all 1,058 of you who are watching right now, don't forget to thumbs up and subscribe here, is that if you don't do that for yourself, there is no substitute for it. Like, you have to have your own media literacy filter and skill set in order to be able to manage this environment, because nobody's going to do it for you. All right. And I just feel very strongly right now, just as I said at the top of the broadcast, if you come across any news that gets your heart pounding, that gets you anxious, that gets you upset, your obligation is to pause, look at the details, look at the facts, and ask yourself who benefits if the story is true. And there's way more to this. I'm going to teach you all how to create your own media filter in this course. But it's seriously, it is a profound obligation on anybody who cares about American politics right now to be extremely careful about what you are reading and what you share. And by the way, I'm going to say that is as true on TikTok as it is anywhere else. Okay. Ask questions, vet sources, know who is posting. I'm seeing a lot of garbage right now. I'm just going to say this, folks who are spinning certain aspects of, for instance, the United States dropping aid over Gaza and building a port there to get emergency humanitarian aid in defiance of the Israeli government. I'm seeing a lot of nonsense from really questionable sources outside of the United States about this that are saying why are we funding Ukraine when we're not providing aid to Gaza? We are providing aid to Gaza. And, I have these moments where I'm like, what are you not looking at? How has the algorithm forced you into a bubble where you are not actually getting anything other than information that feeds your confirmation bias? So extremely important to know who is talking to you, what their own biases are, the positions that they hold, where they are coming from, whether or not they are located inside the United States. What are their particular interests? Are they even legitimate? And if you have questions about this, I strongly encourage you to go back and watch the B block from Rachel Maddow's broadcast on Monday, because she went through this, how there are all these fraudulent media sites that look like they're inside the United States that have been constructed by Russian disinformation services. So it's really critical right now that you get the skills that you need and you develop them to have your own media literacy filter about everything. All right. Lots more to talk about on this right now. That is my 2 cents on the TikTok ban. All right. Want to talk for a second about her testimony yesterday. All right. Somebody asked some questions. There were some questions on the Patreon feed that were along the following lines. Why hasn't Merrick Garland come out and condemned RobertHersh? Why is it that we didn't see the transcripts from Joe Biden before this moment? Okay, so I just have to point something out. The whole point of a special counsel is that they are outside the authority of the Attorney General. RobertHersh does not answer to Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland has no control over RobertHersh. So anybody at this point who is leaning in the direction of blaming Merrick Garland for RobertHersh's bias needs to check themselves, all right? Because RobertHersh did some really unfortunate things in that report and in yesterday's hearing that indicate exactly where he's coming from. He would not commit to not taking a role in a second Trump administration if Trump is reelected. That, by the way, tells you everything you need to know right there. That right there tells you an awful lot. The second thing is he wouldn't correct the fact that Joe Biden remembered the date of his own son's death. All this media coverage, Joe Biden is forgetful. Joe Biden can't remember anything. He's just a doddering old senile man. All of that was pure nonsense fed into the media ecocycle by RobertHersh's fraudulent statements in the report. The testimony in that hearing actually says that he said that Joe Biden had a photographic memory. And RobertHersh wouldn't correct that until it was stuck right under his nose yesterday in the testimony in front of that committee. So the thing that I'm going to say right here that I think everyone has to just like be very mindful of, all right, is that this whole thing, the real top line that everyone is missing is that even in spite of all of this far-right bias by RobertHersh, he exonerated President Biden. President Biden was exonerated for having done anything wrong with any handful of classified documents that were found in his garage and at the Biden Penn Center. He did nothing wrong. And nobody's talking about that, right? Because everybody's like, RobertHersh, Merrick Garland. The real focus of this is that, like, President Biden did nothing wrong. He did nothing wrong. And also his memory is sharp as a tack. So, like, please stay focused on the things that actually matter. Sorry, I'm a little shrill today. Please don't tone police me, but like, I'm mad about it. I'm mad about it. And I think everybody should be mad about it. Because what we're allowing to happen is the Republican talking points to take over our narrative. Okay, if you're blaming Merrick Garland and you're saying like, oh, it's all his fault, or you're like asking questions about why it is that like we haven't seen the transcripts of the depositions until now, you're missing the point. The point, which RobertHersh desperately wants to have buried and which so far he has been very successful at doing, is that President Biden has been exonerated. That's what everyone should be talking about. So, all right, that's that. Couple of other points for today that people should be aware of. Brian Butler, who is now, we know, Trump employee number 5 in the indictments in the Southern District of Florida, has given a series of interviews over the last couple of days about what he learned about Trump's retention of classified material, discussion of highly classified material, movement of highly classified material to evade the FBI and the DOJ. And I'm just going to tell you all that he is an extremely credible witness. I watched some of the footage yesterday of his interviews. I think he is emotionally compelling. He appears to be a truth teller. He has 20 plus years of experience with the Trump organization until he resigned working at Mar-a-Lago. He was asked to do things that violated his morals and his ethics. He lost his deepest friendship over time as a result of coming forward and cooperating here. His best friend is still under indictment and is a co-conspirator with Donald Trump and Walt Nauta. I think it bodes very, very poorly for Donald Trump if and when Judge Cannon ever lets this case go to trial, which is a very big question mark. But I think everyone should be paying attention to the fact that we now have an on-the-record, publicly identified witness who is describing the fact that President Trump told an Australian official nuclear secrets about the United States and Russia, that this witness then overheard that Australian person speaking into his phone in the back of a car to his colleagues. So this is the other thing that I'm just going to point out here, okay? You want to have a meltdown about RobertHersh, fine. But the real issue over here is that Donald Trump literally was discussing our most classified nuclear secrets with like kind of randos who were paying money to be members at Mar-a-Lago. We have much bigger issues to be aware of, okay? Much bigger issues to be focused on. All right. I think the RobertHersh news cycle, by the way, is going to die down in 48 hours. All right. Last thing I want to discuss today is a ruling out of North Carolina that is actually very, very interesting. Actually, there's two things I want to discuss today because there's one more thing that is sort of like a turning point that everyone should be aware of. All right. Next to last thing, penultimate point. Yesterday, there was a ruling out of North Carolina, the state North Carolina appeals court, that permanently enjoined a North Carolina law that had passed the legislature that sought to remove the authority to nominate people to the state election board from the Democratic governor and return it to the Republican legislature. It was adjudicated to be direct election interference. And it was very plainly an attempt, by the way, to make sure that the election board in North Carolina is packed with Trump ideologues who could then throw out the vote if they didn't like it. The law is gone. It's over. This is a very solid ruling. By the way, it's Mark Elias again doing this work. And I have to say that given all the issues that we have in North Carolina with the redistricting that is going to cause us to lose a couple of seats in the House, this is actually a really, really good thing. And I'm going to say one other thing. I'm going to remind you all, this is yet another reason why your local elections matter so much, because whoever you are electing to your state legislatures, to the bench, if you live in a place where judges are elected, to like your local election board, to your governorship, predicts whether or not election results, including for the presidential, are going to be upheld. So please do not neglect your local elections. They are as important right now as the federal elections on every level, because how elections are treated in a given state depends on who we elect to legislatures and to the governorship and to the attorney general's office and as secretaries of state. It's really, really, really important. All right. So this was a great ruling. Okay. Last thing that I want to just point out today, which gave me quite a bit of schadenfreude and joy, is that Don't Say Gay is dead in Florida. After all of these battles over the attempts to ban books, the attempts to stop people from identifying as gay if they are teaching in public schools, the requirement that you can't discuss whether you are LGBTQ or whether a child is LGBTQ or, so-and-so has two mommies, okay? All of that is now dead thanks to court challenges in Florida. In fact, yesterday, instruction went out in Florida saying that schools did not have to enforce Don't Say Gay in the public school system in Florida. So I just want to say one thing about this, because I have been trying to point out to you the fact that we are turning major corners right now. Okay. We turned a major corner last week with the State of the Union. We turned another corner in the last couple of days with the resignation of Ken Buck. I do think that is really very, very symbolic. We've had additional turning points as of last night in the election results, with all these folks showing up to vote for Nikki Haley, even though she's no longer in the race. And now we have a turning point on major policy initiatives that the GOP has been relying on to farm out to all the states that are run by Republican legislatures. Things are changing. I pointed out the other day also that West Virginia shot down more than 20 anti-trans bills. We have a really serious sea change underway right now. And one of the things that I want people to understand is that these are the kind of developments that should give you hope. They should motivate you to keep going. They should motivate you to continue doing the work of getting out the vote for the election, campaigning for candidates that you care about, being really active in your local election cycles, getting to know who's running for even the smallest offices where you live. Finding ways to get out and talk to your neighbors, taking every opportunity to use every conversation you have to ask people if they're registered to vote, who they're planning on voting for, what are the issues that they care about the most right now, and finding ways to pepper those conversations with how their very lives are going to benefit by Democrats and progressives being elected where you live. These are critical, critical things to making sure that disaffected and disenchanted voters get to the polls in November. Because I'm going to say one other thing here. I've said it before, but I'm going to be repeating it ad nauseum. Just talking to the choir, just sitting behind a keyboard and typing into your little social media bubble the things that the outrage about the latest thing that Trump has done is not mobilizing the vote. What we need to do is get to people who think their votes don't matter. What we need to do is get to people who don't follow the news. What we need to do is get to people who think that everybody's the same. All right. Those are the people who we need to be talking to about how the election is changing people's lives, how the Biden administration has already done so much good for people's lives, how the Democrats have passed policies and laws that are benefiting people every day. Because it's got to be about your vision and not just about the villain. I know you guys can go watch. I've talked about this so many times. You can go watch this on other broadcasts. But for real, this is the moment to be doing the work of engaging in the real paradigm shift. Yes, that's the word, Donna, that you read my mind, that is happening on the ground right now in the United States of America. We have to keep the force behind the shift. And the only way that we can do that is through intimate conversations, one-on-one with people who we care about. Even if it's your neighbor across the street, is like, I don't follow politics, everybody's corrupt. You should be talking to that person. The person that you run into at, like a baseball game, soccer game, the person who crosses your path in the grocery store or at, in the parking lot at like whatever, Michael's, you're buying balloons for your kid's birthday. I did that yesterday. You should be talking to those people because it makes a difference. It makes a real difference. And this is particularly true in red states. It's really important that you do this work. All right. All of us have a role to play. It's participatory democracy. All right, my friends. If you like what you see here, if I talked you off a ledge today, if I inform you and I bring information to you that is valuable, please join us over on patreon.com/resistance live and become a paid subscriber for as little as $2 a month. That's how I pay my team behind the scenes. That's how I support my kids. That's how the 5 hours of my workday that is now dedicated to research before this broadcast and everything that comes after and all the other stuff we have to do to make this happen 5-6 days a week. It's actually 6. That's how we get compensated for this really, really hard work. And so if you have not yet become a subscriber, consider it like, your donation, like you would for NPR or PBS or anything else. Make sure that if it matters to you, you're supporting it. All right. Please don't forget to thumbs up this. If you're watching after the broadcast, make sure you drop me a comment. It helps with our circulation on YouTube. I'm going to be here tomorrow, regular time. I'm going to be here for emergency broadcasts if we need them. I'm going to tell you right now, if the Fani Willis opinion drops, I will certainly be here to talk about it. All right. So stay tuned. I appreciate all of you so much. Have a great Wednesday, and I will catch you all here tomorrow at the latest and online in between. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.